You ready, Greg?
Let's go, Jay.
You're listening to The Success Paradigm with your hosts, Jay Atkins and Greg Gray.
Well, I'm excited about today, Greg. It's just you and I.
I'm telling you. Can I just say how much I love the music, by the way, the theme music for our podcast? I
And
don't know. I don't know who picked it, but it is like, oh, yeah, I remember. It's great music.
oh yeah, you gave me three choices and I picked it.
Oh, but yeah, it was all the same one, though. The same three. Anyway, we're doing a podcast. What are we
That's
talking
right.
about today? Yeah.
We are talking about successful partnerships. And, usually about this point, we're doing a bio and a read in. So we're not going to spend any of that time today because you guys all know who Greg Gray, the man, the myth, the legend, is all about. And you know me. So what we're going to talk about today is successful partnerships because I will tell you one thing I know about most partnerships is that they fail.
I thought you were going to say they suck. A lot of them just flat out suck too.
Yeah, I would say, and when I think about partnership and what we're going to talk about today, that I didn't really brief Greg on is, Greg has been married for quite a while, and marriage is a partnership as well as business is a partnership, and a lot of times friendships are a partnership. And I think we're going to talk about our partnership today too, and what makes it really, really successful. And we're going to talk about some of our past partnerships that made them fail. But there is no such thing as failure if you learn from them. And I think that's the best thing about all of my failed partnerships that I've had in the past is I've learned, and those learnings have been in red flags that I now look for when I'm thinking about getting into another partnership with somebody, because partnerships can be really, really good because you're bringing different perspectives into a partnership, but you also have to make sure that you set clear expectations.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And one of the things we wanted to do today too is so we don't have a formal guest, but we do have guests that are watching. So through the podcast, if you guys are no matter where you are actually looking, no matter whose stream you're looking at, if there are questions that you think about that you want Jay and I to address, or you have a comment that you want us to comment on, please feel free to do so in the comments as we stream live on Facebook, and we will take them on the fly. It always makes it exciting, but that way we can make sure everybody's part of today's partnership in this podcast.
Well, and the cool thing we're going to do today, we're going to try this, right? We're going to bring you on the show, and you can actually ask a question if you're brave enough to get on here and do that. Get uncomfortable, get on this live stream and ask us that question. We would love to have you on here. Lola put it in the chat. She's emailed it out. It's been in all of our social media posts that you guys can tell her the question. She'll give you the link to jump on this podcast live right now with us, and you'll be a part of our podcast. So I have a question for you, Greg.
Oh, here we go. Right out. Let's go.
Yes.
Yep.
Before we get into what makes a successful partnership, I have an interesting question that I was thinking about this morning. I've known you for a while, and I know you've been in the speaking business for quite some time, and you've never had a partner. What in the hell made you want to become my partner?
So now that you asked that question, and by the way, I did not know that question was coming, but I actually was part of a partnership way back early in the speaking business for me. So the question really is, why would I do it again after I did it before? So you'll have to ask me about that as we kind of progress through the partnership. So I've been a lone wolf for 26 years. So you described that perfectly. I mean, I am and was the company. So I didn't have to talk to anybody about well, actually, I talked to Melody about pretty much everything because I'm the CEO of the speaking business, but at home I'm the acting assistant manager. I don't know if anybody can relate to that. I used to be the assistant manager, made a bad call, then got demoted to acting assistant manager. I'm fighting my way back. But I had no desire to operate in a partnership at all for a couple of reasons. One is that I didn't see or didn't understand at that point, um, over that period of time, how that would really advance or enhance what I was delivering or what I felt like I could bring to the table. But the other part was I just, you know, sometimes the more heads you get in the room, my experience was that it slows things down. And I like to be very agile with decision making. I don't like, I don't mind disagreement. We'll talk more about that, but I don't like the tussling and wrestling and egos. So I got close to a couple of partnerships, but I backed away from them because I could kind of, you could almost smell the issues associated with it. So the reason that I actually, and I gave a, I didn't just jump right into our partnership. I thought about it quite a bit. Um, I think the reason that I leaned into our partnership is one of the things I think people should think about a lot, which is I knew that you had tools and experience and expertise and a vision for things that were much bigger than what I had seen before. And I could feel that while my business was doing well, I could feel that I was approaching a plateau. And in you and some of the conversations we had before we even discussed it, I was like, wow, this guy is next level. So, I was thinking 40 miles an hour and I'm talking to you and you're going 80 miles an hour. And I thought 40 miles an hour was pretty good until I saw 80 miles an hour. I was like, this guy um, he is helping shift my paradigm around what I can do and what I can be and what I can accomplish. So selfishly, I saw you as a way for me to be able to elevate my game. And in a way and with someone that I watched long enough to know that you were that ethics were a big part of who you were. Trustworthiness was a big part of who you were. I did my research on Jay Atkins, and I was looking for people, quite frankly, to prove me wrong about those things, but I couldn't find anybody that would prove me wrong. And we know a lot of mutual people. Um, but I saw an elevation in my game. And when you can elevate your game with someone that is ethical and smart and not ego driven, you're crazy not to plug into it. So that's why the shift happened after 25 years, quarter of a century, pretty much.
Well, I'm gonna tell you why I wanted to be partners with you. And I
Okay.
told you this before, but the listeners haven't heard this.
Okay.
The biggest reason that I wanted to become partners and do something with you is one, I knew that we could be super successful at what we did, even before I knew you really well. But the other reason I wanted to become your partner, and this is something you should consider when you become a partner, is that you intimidated me.
Hmm.
You intimidated me from the stage because I knew I wasn't as good as you. And you intimidated me with your candor and how everyone was polarized and attracted to you. And I wanted to learn that from you. And that was something that at the time that I was missing that you've taught me and helped me embrace and how to go about that. So that was one of the reasons that I selfishly wanted to partner with you because you had that figured out. And I wanted to learn that from you. And I figured that our two dynamics would be able to be a great dynamic duo and we could help a lot of people. And I think, we'll get into why I think our partnership works really, really well and why the other ones have not worked well. But I also want to kind of go back to our story a little bit, just for the
Okay.
listeners that might not know us or never heard us before.
Right.
I knew of you because I used to send all my staff to some of the things that you used to do for Allstate, and they would always come back and really like what you were training on and the topics. And then, I got to watch you a few times myself, and we were in Vegas
Hmm.
at a conference, and I was getting ready to launch a new product, and I was really nervous. I was in front of my peers, really successful peers, and I forgot a dongle, as we call it, which was to connect a Mac because Mac was not really out front with a lot of projectors and things like that. And you had a Mac.
Right.
And I asked you if I could borrow it, and I offered you money. I said, I'll pay you $250 if I can just borrow that for an hour. And you're like, you don't have to do that. I'll just come in here and watch your presentation. And I didn't know in that moment you connected with me. I was just in my own mind trying to launch this new product and impress people. And I was just thankful you gave me the dongle, but you got to watch me, my emotion, what I was about, because some emotion came out like it does when I'm talking about things that impact people's lives. And then I saw you in Vegas like a year and a half later on an elevator, and you were in a hurry. I think you were getting ready to get on stage.
Mhm.
I was in a hurry, but I just said, "Hey, Greg, I would love to chat with you sometime. I have an idea for you that I'd like to run by you." And your reply to me was, "Any idea that you have, I'm listening." And we didn't even really know each other that
Yeah.
well at that point. You had already, and I was surprised. I was shocked. So for the people listening, like a lot of times you have this thing in your head that you think that people might not be open to something. And well, I was nervous when I was going to present this to you because I just, felt you were so many years ahead of me with experience.
Thanks for adding that piece there. That's good. The experience part. So
Well,
many
you're
years.
much older than me. So,
Yeah.
um,
Thanks for taking it right back. That's cool.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. Do I need to go any further or should
No,
we
you could
talk about the
proceed.
different okay,
No, proceed.
so anyway, this is our banter. This is why our partnership works.
Yes.
There is absolutely zero ego, and we have a lot of fun. But, so I was very nervous to approach you, and then I was very pleasantly surprised by your reaction to my question that didn't even have a actual question in it.
Mm.
So that made me wanna be even closer with you. Then I had the chance to have dinner with you in my hometown because local agent friend that I was friend with said, "Hey, Greg's in town. I'm having dinner with him tonight. You want to join us for dinner?" And I sat next to you, and we were just talking about systems and processes. And I shared a process with you with like taking notes and writing notes and not putting it in twice. And you actually reached out to me the next day and said, "Thanks for changing my life. I've changed this. I've got a pen. I'm never going to touch anything twice." And I was just like, "Hmm."
Yep.
There,
Because
there,
I remember that because I was a legal pad guy. You saw me
yes.
carrying legal pads around. You're like, Greg, get a iPad and the what do they call the thing? The
Uh,
uh
pen.
the
Yeah.
pen. Yeah, it's not
Thing right
complicated
here, right
enough.
here. Now,
Yes, one of those. Yes,
exactly.
I actually went and got it. I had it and ordered it before I even got home that day. Um,
And our relationship just took a turn.
yeah,
Like I didn't even it was not anything I was thinking of, but it's just all these small things that you have to pay attention to in people. And I think that's, then I called you in July of 2017, I believe it was.
mhm,
Yes, 2017, and
2017.
from Colombia. And I said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something, and I'd like to partner up with you on something." And you were like, "Hey, listen, I just want to tell you if we get disconnected because you're in Colombia and I know the cell towers aren't there great, I'm in on whatever it is, but we could talk about the details later if we get disconnected." And I remember at that point was one of the happiest points of my life because I ran upstairs to my wife and I was just like, if you ever watched like a football game and you're a fanatic about sports and like, I don't know why you make this move with your elbow, like you like kind of put it into your side. You're like, yeah, 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 yeah. I went up to my wife and she was like, "Did you win the lottery?" And I was like, "Well, kind of." She was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Listen, I'm gonna partner up with Greg. I've been thinking about this for a couple years." And so I think, that feeling is when you should jump into a partnership with
Mhm.
somebody. I think a lot of people don't have that feeling when they get into a partnership. So I think that's the first step. And again, you can kind of explain your side of the story if you want and
Yeah, I
emotional
do. I
take away
do
from that.
because there was so the first thing is I remember you saying that you thought you were intimidated by me, and I completely did not understand that. In fact, I think that was of all the things you said that I was like, this guy's intimidated by me out because I'm not that, but I didn't know where you were coming from with it at that time. That you were talking about where you wanted to be able to take your presentation skills game and all this other kind of stuff. Because I'm just a guy. Uh, the reason it was so easy, and I remember that elevator ride, and I also remember the call from Columbia because after that call was over, you weren't the only one that went to go talk to your wife. I went to go talk to mine as well. Because uh, to this day, in terms of people that I really know very, very well, and I don't mean people that I can pass and I can recognize, but people who I really know well. I didn't know anyone more successful, and it didn't even know exactly how or why you were successful, but I didn't know anyone that was more successful than you. And I knew that if I was going to go to the next level, and this is one of the takeaways for people uh, that are watching and listening. And by the way, the intention of this is not the Greg pats Jay on the back, Jay pats Greg on the back. That's not why we're doing this. The reason that is important because many of us will cross paths with someone, or maybe a couple of people at some point in our lives, where we'll go, that lady or that guy really has their stuff together. And we hesitate because we know we could probably benefit from it. But the option would be to, I'm a nobody. He won't probably talk to me, or she won't really, she's busy. She really won't have the time for me. You personally know of a story, Jay, and I won't bring the name up, of someone that I was really just was absolutely my idol, and inspired me even to get into speaking at all, and met them off stage once and was as disappointed as I've ever been in my adult life. And so I know how people can be on stage and how they can be off stage, how they are in front of other people and how they are, one on one. And so that one on one part was the part, and the just to take the story a little further. So Jay is this meeting that we were at featured uh, literally some of the most successful insurance companies, insurance agents in the entire United States of America. I think there were maybe 60 people there. It's a very small group. It's special invitation. I mean, it is. So I actually got invited to speak at that conference. That's why I was there, which also is pretty big doo doo, by the way. I found out even later. Thank you, Laura Harris, for that invitation. Uh, so I'm listening to all these conversations, and I remember hearing you say something like, "Yeah, I'm going to make this investment and buy this thing or whatever it was." And you said, "And I don't really expect it to return any money for like 5 years." And I was sitting in the room, and I was like, "What did he just say?" He's actually going to. Uh, I know I heard that wrong. You're going to invest in something, and you know it's going to be 5 years before. And my mind, I was aware of how small my thinking was. And I'm not a small thinking guy, just to be clear about this. But I had never heard anyone talk about business that way. And by the way, this was not just an aha moment for me. It was also an aha moment for other people in the room that had the same type of status, in terms of where they were in the insurance world in this country. And so that was one of the first things. But the other thing, back to the dongle story, which always, I feel that's going to become a thing. I hope that never becomes a hashtag, the dongle story. It probably just became a hashtag. I'll wait and see if it shows up in the Facebook comments. Was the thing that you were talking about, that you were launching, had nothing to do with insurance specifically. It had to do with being able to help people that have been in dangerous situations. Specifically, you were telling a story about this woman that was being brutalized by her boyfriend in a public setting, and how you intervened on her behalf. And as you were talking about it, you were choking up from the stage, and I was like, "This dude is like, he's like real. He has all this stuff. He's buying this thing that he says he doesn't worry about returning it, a return for 5 years, and then the next moment, he's talking about intervening to help this woman that's being brutalized by this man in a public setting." And I was like, he's fascinating. So yeah, I might need to stay close to this guy. So when you said to me, when you made that call, in fact, that I got to edit a little bit of what you said. So I didn't say whatever it is I'm in. It was a lot shorter than that. I said, "Jay, I know you're calling for Columbia. The I know the line may not be good. So let me just say this. Yes. Whatever it is, yes. In case we get cut off, yes." He had not said what it was. I did not know what it was. But that yes came from someplace else. It didn't just come from that moment. It came from being in each other's space for a while. So it's a really big deal. And that's 3 years ago now, roughly.
Yeah, we
And
talk about every single day, which I think
mhm,
is the next key to
yep.
effective, successful partnership. But one of the things that I want to kind of talk about is what makes our partnership successful, and
Mhm,
also what's made some of my partnerships not successful. And one of the things you alluded to in the beginning, and I think, there's two types of ways to communicate in a partnership, in a marriage, in a relationship. And I've read some books that say, arguing is good for the partnership. And what I have found, especially with men, because men have way larger egos than anybody else on the planet, any other animal or any other being. And when we argue, we always want to be right. And one of the things that we've never done, which I can't say that this is, I mean, even with my wife, I mean, we've argued and we try not to, and we try to have disagreements, but we've never had an argument ever.
not once. Not
Um,
once.
we've disagreed in a moment. And then we both just walk away and say, okay, what I'm going to listen to what you're saying. I'm going to take into consideration what you're saying. And it usually takes us about 16 to 24 hours to come back with the
Mhm,
resolution. And most of the time, it's somewhere in the middle of both. And
yep.
it ends up being a great idea that we expand upon. And I think that's the biggest difference in our partnership and all the other ones that I've had, is that we disagree, but we never argue. And I think a lot of marriages would have success if people would just disagree, listen to one another, and not argue their point about who's right or who's wrong. And, I will tell you, the fault of mine is when I'm convicted to an idea or a vision, I usually will stand my ground. Um, and I would tell you, I think the reason why I stand my ground so much is because maybe I don't respect the other person's experience and or opinion as much as I know from experience and of my own life experience. And I think with you, I was very hesitant in the beginning to tell you what I was really thinking, because I didn't want you, because I would just talk out loud. And I would say, okay, Greg, I don't
Yeah,
want you to get attached to what
right.
I'm saying right now, because tomorrow morning I could wake up and I could feel a little bit differently after I think about it, because I know myself.
Mhm.
And you would always say, "Oh, I'm not gonna get attached," and I would hang up and I'd just be like, "I probably shouldn't have talked to him about that quite yet." But I've never, ever regretted it,
Yeah.
because every time I talk to you about it, you'll give me different scenarios or vice versa, and sometimes, and the other thing I like about our partnership is there is no ego. It doesn't matter if you're right, if I'm wrong, if you're wrong. And even if, you're wrong most of the time, I don't ever put it in your face. I never, like, jump up and down and be like, "See, I told you." No, I'm just kidding. Um,
Nah, 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 nah,
we're
nothing
we're
like that.
and I don't think we're ever really ever wrong. I mean, I know, like, there was a situation the other day with an employee that you called me about, right? And,
Mhm,
when we're in a situation, sometimes we're emotionally attached to the wrong things,
mhm.
right? And then that's what I love about you and I. We'll balance each other out, and you'll tell me the situation, and, at some point, I know when that point is, I gotta put my foot down and say, "Okay, Greg, this is what I would do in this
Right.
exact moment," right? And then that
Mhm.
kind of shakes you out of that emotional state, but you know that it's coming from a great point. And I think that's what's you need to understand about a partnership, is where is it coming from? And I never feel like you're coming from a place of selfishness or what's gonna just benefit me.
So, this is always these conversations are always fun to have, but it's even better to have with kind of a surround sound kind of thought, because it took this word called trust for me to even bring it to your attention in the first place. So this isn't like this is something that was laying around on my desk in a piece of paper and Jay saw it and was like, "Well, Greg, I wouldn't do that." The only reason he knew was that I picked up the phone and said, "Hey, this is what's going on. This is what I'm thinking." And to some degree, part of me knew that uh, you were going to do what you said, or you were going to make a suggestion because I knew I could feel that I needed my mind to be expanded, but I was not able to do it by myself. And that's one of the that's one of the real highlights I think of a really good partnership is that you can trust that this person will expand your thinking even when it's not where your thinking was going. And it's not that we don't have egos. I mean, everyone has some ego here or there. I when I think about what makes partnerships work, not just ours, but partnerships in general, is a quote from Colin Powell, who said, "Don't hold your ego so close to your position that when your position falls, your ego goes with it." And that is one of the more profound things I've ever read when it comes to having a conversation with someone or running something by someone. Very often in partnerships, when my position falls, my ego falls. And it's when my ego falls that the argument starts to rise because I'm not really defending my point of view. What I'm really doing is defending my feelings. And when I start defending my feelings, that's when the arguments start to come up. So um, that thought about being able to separate your position from your ego, I think, is very important. Now, what we haven't talked about when it comes to partnerships is the fact that as much as I trust you, and as much as you trust me, and as good as our chemistry is, we're both smart enough to know that if there's going to be a piece of paper that's in front of Jay and in front of Greg, that you might want to have someone that's a professional put that together and not just write it on a napkin somewhere. And a lot of times, what happens, Jay, is people think that, well, okay, so we're gonna let's do this business plan. We actually we have Agency Sales Academy together. We do this podcast together, and so there are people that would be offended that they said, okay, so we're going to do Agency Sales Academy, we're going to do this podcast. So before we get started, let's put some stuff on paper so we'll understand where we are and what our positions are from a contractual point of view. There are people that would be offended by that because it's almost as if, what, you don't trust me? Is that why you need to get an attorney to put this together?
Oh.
That it is because smart people engage smart people in smart ideas. A lot of partnerships break down not because of what we have, but because somewhere there was an I that was not dotted or a T that wasn't crossed or a conversation that did not come up that all of a sudden emerged and we don't have any way to be able to deal with it. Because if it's on paper, we don't have to argue with the contract. If there's not a contract, if there's nothing on paper, guess all we have to do is argue with each other to no resolution.
So
So
Greg, I'm this is not what I was planning on talking about, but I'm so glad that you brought that up
yeah,
because when I first started in my first partnership, it was with one of my best friends.
mm,
And our attorney, we put everything in writing. And he would ask us certain questions going through it because he had experience with partnerships, right? And so we were both like, that'll never happen.
mm,
That'll never happen. Like I mean, our friendship is first and it's the most important thing. And no matter what happens, and he was like, okay, so let's just say, for example, worst case scenario, right? Let's just say you woke up one day and you didn't deliver what you said you were going to do, and you had resentment, and it went to court. And we're like, nah, that'll never happen. We would never take it to that level. He said, let's just say that it did. Is it going to hurt to actually put it in writing right now and have it there just in case? Like, it's a parachute. We just want to make sure like there's no gray areas, because if it's a partnership should not be gray. It should be black and white, because then there's no question, there's no resentment, because this is what we agreed on before this scenario happened.
before the storm hits. Yep.
And that partnership ended up ending well, but ending right when we thought it was for eternity. Just like when you get married, you think it's for eternity. And there's a divorce rate of 50%, right? I mean, that's why it's a legal document, because you need to set the expectations. And I think even in marriages, you don't set expectations and you have all kinds of expectations, which I've talked about many, many times, right? Is
Hmm.
I don't pay you money. You don't pay me money.
Right.
So therefore, I can't have any expectations of you whatsoever. Like the expectations are like, the common things. To be honest,
Correct.
to be transparent with me, to be upfront with me, give me positive feedback. But I almost can't even expect that, because the only expectation I can have is if I was paying you money. And the only other expectation that I could have is of myself. So I have to live into those things and lead by example, and then you will. So I think what you're saying is have everything in writing is
Hmm.
so dang important. And also set the expectations up front. And if someone's not living up to the expectation, and the tough thing is friends, right? When you're in business with
Sure.
friends, when someone's not living up to the expectations of what you set out in the contract, it's really, really tough to have that conversation, because you're afraid you're going to damage the relationship. And ultimately, you will, because I've had some partnerships that the relationships got damaged
Yep.
because people didn't fulfill their obligation. And that's the tough thing. I kind of want to segue with you is going into business. You always hear, don't go into business with family and don't go into business with friends, be- because those friendships and those family ships are going to be jeopardized, because most of the time people are not going to treat the business and the partnership like they would someone that they actually have a contractual relationship with, and there is
Right.
no emotion.
Well, I wanted to, when you're talking about that, that the term that came to mind was that I can't even use anymore. We can't really use the term entanglements anymore because of Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith. But uh, there are too many cross ties uh, in what you're talking about, and because when you and I had mutual respect, but I would say, and I think it's fair to say that we have grown in our friendship, but our friendship was not the foundation of us doing this. It was like, he looks kind of smart, looks like he might be able to up my game. You saw the same thing in me. You watched, you researched, I watched, I researched. So it's not like we were best friends
It's a good
or even close friends. I mean, we were probably respectful acquaintances at best. Uh, but it doesn't mean that it can't work.
and and
But
and let
but
me stop you.
yeah,
Even
yeah,
to the start. I mean, the
yeah.
first time that we went to Vegas to shoot content when you joined ASA,
Hmm.
I mean, we weren't like best buds. We weren't best friends. We
No,
were best partners. We were best business, and that doesn't usually happen. It usually happens in reverse. People are friends and they're like, "Oh yeah, we should start a business together."
right.
And I think it's a good point that you point out there is, our friendship evolved into what it is now because of the partnership.
Yep. And I think it's, if there's going to be something that is that so back to the attorney thing. A lot of people don't do that because they don't want to spend the money on it. I know I've talked to a bunch of people who were thinking about doing some type of, even if it were not a direct partnership, some kind of business deal with another entity, and it's like, need an attorney. Well, I don't want to spend the money on that, and I'm like, it's not an expense, it's an investment, because uh, the document can speak for you, and you don't have to worry about trying to make something happen by the force of your will. So if you're going to do a partnership, uh, especially if it's a business partnership, get an attorney. That actually, if I'm going to do a business deal with someone and I mention an attorney, Jay, and they kind of back up a little bit, that's my red flag. If you don't wanna do that, then you already helped me. You just gave me a look into the future by telling me that this is not gonna work. No harm, no foul. I still like you. It's not even the issue of not liking you or liking you. It's just that's the thing. So, you were talking earlier about, partnerships that we've had. and some that were better, others not so good. Um, I would, if I could add this piece, and I bet you have some perspective on this too, is even if it's a good situation, slow down a little bit before you get into it. Just slow down, because the euphoria of being able to work with someone that you really see being able to lift your game and lift your income and lift your, your worldview, it's kind of euphoric, and people will run toward it with great energy. Um,
90
and
people.
Yes, and will absolutely, find themselves being harmed by it. So I'll what a lot of people don't know, and if there's folks that are looking at this, the first large major engagement I ever had, as a speaker was as kind of a collective of speakers that was doing work for the U.S. Postal Service. This is in fact, September. I think we just crossed our 27th anniversary of when the business started. So there was this guy that was one of my just a lot of respect for this guy. He had been doing a lot of work for the U.S. Postal Service, and so all of a sudden he's bidding for this job to do training for 150,000 window clerks, is what they called them at the time. Retail service associates, I think, is what it is now, um, on customer service. So 150,000 people were going to go to this training coast to coast. In fact, off the coast, from Hawaii to Alaska to Puerto Rico. So he put together this collective of speakers. We did all these interviews and um, auditions, really almost, to do this stuff. So I was like, man, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to be traveling everywhere. The money was going to be really, really good. It was going to be, I liked the job that I had, but this opportunity was going to be much bigger. And he said, "Are you ready to go?" And I was like, "Yeah, where do I sign?" And I was like, "Yes." So I was signing because I knew, and I had airline tickets in my hand the next day to go to Chicago. Then it was Los Angeles, and it was all over the place. It was just fantastic. Um, and it went on pretty regularly, Jay, for like 3 years. I mean, pretty much. The only time I didn't travel was when I said I don't want to go this week. Otherwise, I was going every place. 43 weeks a year I was traveling. The business did fantastic. Um, some of the other speakers came and went, but I was always in the mix. I was one of the, if I can say so myself, one of the guys that was on the team that was pretty highly rated. So I got a chance to go back some places a few times, um, and it went for 3 years, outstanding. And then the guy made a phone call and said, "So you know what? This has been a great ride. Um, so we're shutting down the shop and we're going to live in Hawaii." What? I was like, oh, and then now I'm excited, Jay, because I was like, for 3 years, I've been building this huge, customer base. Yeah, just everywhere. But you know what I didn't read? I didn't read the no compete clause, which said for 18 months after the relationship dissolved, I could not approach the company for 18 months on a paid basis. Didn't know that because I was so euphoric about the opportunity. So I went from traveling everywhere I wanted to go pretty much to having even the people in the postal service call me and say, "We want to hire you." And the only way I could do it was for free.
Well, the non-compete thing is a catch-22.
Mhm.
And why I say it's a catch-22 is because, like you said, if someone's not willing to sign that, then they might have another objective in 2 years after they
Mhm.
build up a
Mhm.
network, right? So from his
Mhm.
standpoint, it's like, "Oh, what are you gonna do?"
Yep.
But then, he screwed you, and now you have to stick. So just from a contractual standpoint, for
Yeah.
anybody listening that wants to give you that, so you need to make sure that in that contract, if it's his decision and he's moving a company or gonna stop the company or gonna, go somewhere else and you're not gonna be a part of the company, that non-compete, non-solicit can be void. If
Well,
and the thing is you didn't even
mhm.
read it, right? You were so
I did.
excited.
I
And the
was
point is
excited.
I was just excited, but when you're getting into a contract, this is where partnerships and negotiations break down,
Mhm.
right? Because people wanna understand the why, and you always wanna build in a partnership, always win-wins, right?
Mhm.
It's never you win, I lose, you win. That will be the fastest way to destructing a partnership. And what I want to say about that, is in the beginning of partnerships, there's all kinds of different partnerships that you can structure. It can be investment, it can be time, it could be relation. So, but what happens a lot of times, let me give you an example.
Okay.
You start in a partnership, and my job in the partnership is you get to tap my network, right? And I have relationships with executives. I also am really good at negotiating real estate deals, for space and setting the space up, and the things that I'm
Mhm.
good at. I'm not going to go into all of them, but in a partnership deal, like a lot of the things, I'm on the front end of
Right.
the deal, right? And I'll go into a partnership as long as it doesn't consume a lot of my time on the back end, but I will get you started and set you up and give you my expertise. And when you go into partnerships like that, a lot of times people forget 2 years later the agreement of the
Mhm.
partnership and what my contribution is, and then they start resenting because, like, I'm doing all the work, I'm doing all the labor, you're not doing shit. And
Mhm.
you're making still 50% of this money, and I'm making 50% of the money, but I'm doing all the work. And it's like, okay, this business would not exist. It wouldn't be at the place if it wasn't for me.
If it didn't get off the ground
Right?
the way it did,
And it's
yeah.
here because we're both doing it, right? And I don't take credit away from that person that's in the business and doing it, but that was the expectation. But
Mhm.
what you have to be careful of is people forget. We forget really, really, really easy of what we agreed upon in certain relationships. And we forget that someone did all the sweat in the beginning to get the business off the ground, that actually got the clients or had the resources. So I think that's another thing when you go into these partnerships is you just have to reiterate that. But then a lot of times they explode. Even when someone says, yes, yes, yes,
Mhm.
that sounds good. I agree. I'm going to do that. A lot of times that kind of partnership will explode because it
Yep.
gets to the point where they forgot where
Well,
they came from or what you did.
so Jay, if you took exactly that same um, commentary that you just shared and took business out and put marriage in, you'd have exactly the same scenario.
Yep, exactly.
And the thing that I am learning, I try not to use
Learned.
the letters ed at the right, because every time I do that, I'm learning again. Is that um, we had uh, Reverend Dr. William E. Flippin on as our podcast guest for Success Paradigm. And he was talking about the fact that he would not marry a couple unless they went through counseling with him first. That was a prerequisite. And if they said they didn't want to do it, he said, I won't marry you. And it's because of those conversations that happen before you jump the broom that you're like, and I can't wait to talk to him about this offline, but I'm guessing that there's been at least one of those little consultations where somebody said something and the other one, "Hmm? What? What? I'm sorry, you don't like what?" But that's who. And had they not done that, now it doesn't mean that they don't move forward, but it does mean that we've taken a surprise out of the game. The There was a larger lesson to that non-compete. I'm glad you said what you said about the non-compete clause, but there was a bigger lesson than just not being able to work with that company. The bigger lesson is in a partnership is that you don't lose yourself in the partnership, that you are still uh, a partnership is part of who you are, but it is not all encompassing. The bigger lesson, Jay, was not the fact that not the fact that now I couldn't approach this company and do business with them. The bigger issue was I got lazy because the partnership was feeding me.
You got fat and happy.
I did. I had no marketing, no website. I didn't even have business cards. I didn't need any of that for almost 4 years. So all I had to do, and back then it was, I mean, 25 years ago, the tickets were literally mailed to my house, the airline tickets. If those of you are older remember the cardboard tickets they would mail to you, had the little rip off thing at the end. I just went to my mailbox and saw where I was going next week. The problem was, and this is an important thing with partnerships, is that you cannot be so engaged or so entrenched in them that you lose your individual identity. And one of the things I think that makes our partnership strong, and other partnerships strong, is that we have this, but we are not we aren't this. We are this as well. I do things beyond here, you do things beyond this partnership. So and it's important because if you have all your eggs proverbially in the same partnership basket, then what do you have if for some reason even if that basket is dissolved peacefully? What do you have if that's gone? And I think people entrench them and with relationships, to make that parallel, you know, I love what my wife and I do when we spend time together, but I love the fact that there's things that she likes to do without me, and love the thing that I like to do without her. Because if it was all about only what we did together, if she doesn't feel like being bothered with me, then I'm left to sit on the couch pouting because we're not doing something together right now, instead of trying to figure out who I am, not just in this partnership, but beyond this partnership, and being a fully rounded person that has options for time and interests and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's really important.
Well, I think, with what you just said is a perfect segue to why our partnership works. Because, with you having different experiences in different arenas and being married a lot longer than me and being on the stage longer than me and being in that world longer than me and having other businesses that I don't have and me having business you don't have, we as a partnership, even though it has nothing to do with maybe planning the podcast or
Right.
ASA or content or all the stuff that we're working on or the next live presentation that we're going to do, I run just about everything by you because
Mhm.
I trust you, and I can, you have nothing to do with that business and I'm asking your perspective, if you were in my situation, what would you do? It's coming from a source of you have no connection to the result of it or not. So you're going to give me an honest opinion. So that's the kind of thing that's good when you have a partnership that you can actually run other businesses that have nothing to do with you. Like, I'm writing a book right now and I sent you the intro last night and I said,
Right.
"Hey, what do you think about this?" Right.
Right.
And
Right.
so, and what I want to segue from that question is, this is a question I told you I was going to ask you, that I thought you were going to be shocked that I would ask, because I've never asked you this question before.
Okay, here we go. I'm ready.
But it's from the book that we read together, The One Thing. And it's
Mhm.
actually two questions,
Okay.
um, because you taught me this. And this is what I learned from you. So, what is the one thing that I could do to make our partnership better?
Hmm. What is the one thing you could do to make our partnership better?
And then the other question I'm going
Hmm.
to put on top of that to make you think about two things, and we can answer it by the
Okay.
end, or we don't have to answer it
Okay.
on our Facebook
Okay.
page or whatever. But
Yep.
the other question you should be asking your partner is, what is the one thing that you would like me to stop doing to make our partnership
Mm,
better?
yep. Yeah, we had that conversation just recently,
Mhm.
as part of the book club. So uh, I will tell. So the first thing before I answer the question, let me speak to that question. And in speaking to that question, what I think is really important is that you ask me that question and I ask you that question. And then next month, you ask me that question and I ask you that question. Because through the evolution of the partnership, the answer today, based on the circumstances that we find ourselves in, may not be the same next month or 6 months from now. Um, it is also, both of those questions are questions of great humility, because when you ask someone how can I serve you better, I talk to my team about that. I've taught that in seminars. What would happen if you asked your customer, how can I serve you better, not what can I sell you, what can I upsell you, but how can I serve you better? When you ask that kind of question, what you will get typically is a response that you got from me, and I've been teaching that question forever, which is, you make me pause for a moment, because you said, what is the one thing? You didn't ask me, give me a list of 6 things. You said the one thing, which means I have to really think about that. If it's gonna be one thing, what is that one thing going to be today? And then be able to articulate it back out. Um, so I will tell you
But if you're
now
going
that.
to ask that question,
Yeah.
you got to be open and willing to kind of live into that space. And then I think when you answer that question, one of the things you have to do, besides just saying what the one thing is
Yep,
explain why that one thing would help make it better.
absolutely. Because without that context, you don't really know how to execute around it. I mean, it could really fall shallow. Um, I think the one thing that, and this is us actually asking each other this question live in front of all these folks that are watching this and will see this podcast because it was not anticipated. I think the one thing that you can do, Jay, to um, continue to build on or improve or even maintain the level of um, our partnership is to always speak to me from your gut, unvarnished. Um, the very thing that you said you were kind of nervous about doing when we first. And I think I remember a conversation where I said to you, I was like, I don't need you to clean it up. There's a lot of people in my life that try to clean up stuff before they tell me stuff, and very often it's because they had to clean it up because it was dirty in the first place. Just tell me from your gut what it is that you think I need to do better, and what do you think we can do to grow the company? And don't do it with a fear of what my response is going to be, because I think I've earned from you at this point uh, enough respect that you know that whatever you say to me, I'm going to consider. Because
I'm so glad
yeah,
that I did not tell you what the question is
yeah,
because I would tell you right now I have chills running up my body because that is probably the most freeing thing that anyone's ever said to me. Because that's when I'm my best, when I don't have to be on eggshells and I can tell
hmm,
you exactly what's on
yeah,
my mind without you reading into it or thinking that I'm, tearing you down. So, like, I
right,
really, really appreciate you saying that to me. Although I'll always be constructive. That's
sure,
who I am. But I think the fact that you said that. So, I can I tell you mine?
yeah, absolutely,
Um, I need you when I ask you how I can get better on stage or what I could do better from stage or in a presentation for you to be raw with me and tell me exactly what it is. And because I know that I can get better, I know that I can get better when I'm speaking to people one on one, and you have that gift. And a lot of times you will build me up when I need to be tore down. And that's
hmm,
what I'm looking for. The build up is great, but in that moment, I'm not looking for that. And I know a lot of times people think that you're reaching out because you want something positive to come your way.
right.
And again, if I've done something really, really well, I know your ninja coaching style, and you're always gonna start with something positive. Um, but I would like for you to be harder on me, in an area that I want to become really, really good at. Um, and I think the one thing that you could stop doing, in
Okay,
our relationship that would um, make it better is
okay,
stop being ninja with me. Be raw like
okay,
you want me to be raw with you. Like,
got it.
here it is. Like, if I'm talking about a certain situation or,
Mhm.
run an idea by me, sometimes you throw ninja stars at me, and they're kind of flying by my head, and I'm just like, "Tell me what the real deal is." And I think that would take our business to the next level where
Yes,
and again,
yeah,
we might disagree in that moment, but
sure,
it's momentary.
sure.
And I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna sleep on it, I'm gonna come back, I'm like, "Hey, you know what, Greg? I think you might be onto something." Or I might come back to you and be like, "I think it's shit. I think it's a
And
horrible
and
idea."
we have had so many conversations that within 24 hours were exactly what you just said. Um, so this is, I'm hoping that people are uh, this is Greg and Jay evolved over time. And I don't mean over time as in like since our partnership has been in place, but I mean over a lifetime. Because I know had anyone asked me that question or gave me those answers that you just gave 20 years ago, I don't know that I would have been able to handle it, because I think we are so um and this is not just millennials. Millennials get a lot of flack for, getting trophies for everything and, and participation stuff, but Our generation taught them that. We did that to them. And we did that to them because there was some part of us that sought that. Maybe we didn't get it, or I don't know what it was, but we own that. And so
I've never
I,
heard anybody say that before. We always blame millennials.
yeah, but we raised them.
Correct.
So I mean, so
And that's really
why do we keep complaining about the folks that we raise? They shouldn't get a trophy for everything. Where's my daughter's trophy? In the same sentence. Um, but
and I remember when I was younger, I played baseball and I sucked when I was like
mm,
10 years old. And I remember my dad talking to the coach and be like, "You should play my son." And I'm like, "Yeah, you should play me." And now I look back and I was like, I sucked. Like,
that's right,
the coach, when I grew up, if you sucked, you didn't get playing time. Like if a
right,
ball got by you,
right.
he was on the bench. That's just how life is, right? So
hmm
I mean, the coach didn't tell me, my dad didn't tell me, go play harder, go practice more, go spend more time catching the ball, hitting the ball.
Yes.
And, so that's, you're right. We created it. We created
Yep.
this mess.
Well, absolutely. And then we have a lot of opinions about it later. What I would encourage everyone to do is to think about the partnerships that they are in, just from this conversation, um, and and whether they are personal partnerships or professional partnerships or sports teammates. It doesn't matter where that partnership lies, and ask yourself. And this can be a rhetorical question, but ask yourself, of the relationships that you're in that you consider to be serious partnerships, how many of them could withstand the answer that Jay and I just gave to each other? Just unvarnished, because that we basically gave each other the same answer. Just tell me like it is. Don't hold back. Um, Now, does it sting from time to time? Hell yeah, it stings from time to time, because very often we may not be aware of where we are in this space until we actually hear it from someone. But if you have a shared vision of where you're trying to go with something, or where you're trying to go with someone, then that part will mend itself pretty easily. So, can I give you an example? I'm going to tell you what I want you to stop doing in a minute, but I want to tell people how that got introduced to our conversation a few days ago. So, um, my girlfriend, also my wife, Melody, we have three beautiful daughters. Uh, just for sake of conversation, so that people know, we are a blended family, but we don't talk about our family being I just have three beautiful daughters. When we first started kind of getting serious to the point we thought maybe matrimony was out, then all of a sudden we kind of started, the kids were kind of be in the same space, because we didn't blend the kids before we knew where we were going. By the way, sounds like a good partnership. Don't move too fast. Make sure everything's cool first. So our middle daughter, Alicia, um, I remember when she was like 9 years old and we were first really trying to get to know each other. Now, understanding that while I probably wasn't the best hairdresser in the world, when Danielle, the baby girl, my bio girl, so to speak, was little, I did her hair and everything. So I was that dad. I was probably not the best at it, but as dads go, I was pretty good at doing hair. Um, but Alicia, when we were first meeting each other, and I would play with Danielle's hair, twirl her hair, and all this other kind of stuff. So when we were getting to know each other's kids, my first thought, Jay, was to ask, you know, the older girls, what should I do to be for you to be a good dad, or to be a good stepdad, or for me to I wanted to find out what I could do that would elevate me. And I paused before I actually asked that question, because I realized, without intending to be, how manipulative that question was. It's like, what can I do that will make you like me? Was really what I was saying. I was like, how idiotic is that to say to anybody, um, but especially a child? So I took a little different tack, and I said to her, I said, Alicia, what is it that I need to make sure that I don't do that will help us have a better relationship? What should I make sure I don't do? And she said, something that if I had 1,000 guesses, I never would have imagined what she said. She said this, "Don't mess with my hair." This is a 9 or 10-year-old girl. Don't mess with my hair. Because she knew I did Danielle's hair, but Alicia's hair is a thing. I would never have known that, Jay, had I not asked this 9-year-old girl, what should I make sure that I don't do that would harm our relationship? And she said, "Don't mess with my hair." And I wonder, uh, later in life, how many of us are messing with people's hair, and not aware that that thing that we think is innocent is harming a relationship because we never asked the question. So let me tell you what I want you to stop doing. You ready?
Not really, but go ahead.
Okay, there you go. Um,
I
I
mean,
want,
think
I,
about that for a second, right?
yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's a tough question,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You
Oh,
wanna
it's a very tough.
like,
Why you think I was buying time with all these other stories?
what am I doing that he doesn't like? Damn it. Like that's the first thought that comes in my head, and I
Yeah,
don't hear it, to be honest with you. So
yep.
that's great. We're gonna cue the music, and that was a great podcast. Really,
Well, I think you said something that I think is important to highlight. I didn't say, and you didn't say something that I don't like. It's not about like or not like. It is about do or don't do. Those are not necessarily the same things. So, what I would tell you that I would like you to stop doing is, damn, now that I've thought about it, there's like 12 things. You said one, right?
I
Okay,
got
so
I
one.
got my list right here. I can write them down.
Okay. Um, I am committed to making sure that I am really direct when I speak to you and talk to you and give you feedback. But the way I do it is has evolved and has been who I am and who I've grown to be over these XX number of years. And it's who I'm comfortable with and I'm comfortable with speaking. So what I want you to stop doing is thinking that because I'm ninja, that I'm doing it to be mystical. I'm doing it because that's how I communicate best. Now, what you've told me that I really got is, damn, Greg, you got some development to do because there may be other people that may be missing what you're trying to say because of what you're doing. So these questions have in this, and for the entire world to see, neither of us knew what these answers were going to be. I didn't even know the questions were coming. But I feel like I've grown in this moment. And if you are in a partnership of any type and you are not growing in a way that is uncomfortable, Jay's been talking about forever. You got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Those are uncomfortable moments, but they are growth moments. And in partnerships, that's where the biggest breakthroughs happen. The biggest breakthroughs happen where we go, wow, okay, all right. And you can actually look at the other person and say, what we haven't said yet, but I think everyone should say, when you get the answer to these questions, this is what you should say. Thank you for telling me that. If you ask someone these questions and they give you an answer, the first thing you should do is to express gratitude for the fact that because guess what we tend to do, Jay? We tend to say, well, I
You
don't
def-
understand why you want me to do that. We start defending.
So what did you want me to stop doing?
Well, I'm going to text you a few things.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I've got a
Because
few of them written
all you
down.
just said is why I love you, right? So the thing is,
Yes.
like, the reason that I don't like for you to play ninja is because I know you're ninja, right? And I would rather you just get to it a lot faster instead of like, telling me all these little things that I got to read between the lines because it's kind of exhausting. I'm like, okay, okay, this is what he means. Okay, that's what.
But
And
I'm growing you in the process, Jay.
right,
I'm
but
growing you
then,
in the
but
process.
then what you just learned there, and I've told you this many
Mhm.
times. I'll ask you. I'm like, did you play Ninja Greg or Old Greg? Like,
Right,
which
right.
one?
Because there is an old Greg. That is a fact. There is definitely. Oh man, that's a whole nother
That,
podcast. Old Greg.
but
Yeah.
I think you're open to sometimes people don't get what you're trying to say to them. And I
Yeah.
get it. I just want to get there faster because you know me. I'm just like, okay, what? Just tell me like and I really want to hear sometimes like, okay, all right, you sucked right there. Like that part right there, don't say that again. Like don't when you did that, like don't. I mean, why? Okay. Because for me,
Right.
take that when you tell me, and I respect you. You tell me not to do something again, I'm not going to do it again. Right? It's done. Like that to me is like I'm happy. I'm walking away, even though you just punched me in the face and told me how much I suck. I'm walking away and be like, yes, yes, I'm never going to do that again. And I'm not thinking about how I did it. And that's where people get caught up in partnership.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
come and they're like, God, I wish I would have done that. I wish I wouldn't have said. Don't live in the past. Like live in the moment of,
Yes.
oh, I'm better.
It's
Right? I just did
there it is.
better.
And there it is. Are you better? Because if one of the main pieces, one of the primary components, one of the most critical components to a good partnership, I don't care what kind of partnership it is does it make me better? Does this partnership make me better? Whether it's romantic or whether it's business. Am I better for being in this partnership? Or the other side of it, that would be ninja,
Can't
wouldn't it?
continue.
Or am I worse off being in this partnership?
And this can't
And
continue.
yes, I almost went ninja right there. I was right. It was right there. But if you find out that you're better, then and you believe that you're better, it'll be easier to express gratitude when you get feedback. If, however, this relationship is not making you better, then you're probably cobbling it together with toothpicks and popsicle sticks and chewing gum, and it's probably fragile to the point of breaking anyway. So, do yourself and that person a favor. Don't spend time in the same space if it's not making you better. No harm, no foul. But great partnerships make you better.
Or just effectively communicate, like be completely honest with one another. And
Yeah.
we talked about this on our book club today, and if you guys aren't on the book club listening to this, you should be on our book club every single week. It's absolutely free. There's no there's no catches. We're just trying to make people better. But one of the things that we talked about in the book club today, and I just lost my train of thought, with the communication. Oh, effective times to communicate. There you go.
Mhm.
So I used to struggle with this thing with my wife and communicating. And in my head, if I want to talk about something and it wasn't the right time, I'd always just be like, "God, why is she so difficult? I'm always on eggshells with her. Like, why can't I just talk about this when I need to? Because it's pressing in my mind, right? Not pressing
Right.
in her mind,
Right.
pressing in my mind. You could take that into partnerships too, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes, when I've been in partnerships, I'm looking at someone and saying they're difficult because they don't want to talk about what I want to talk about when I want to talk about it because their mind's somewhere else, right? And when I was reading this book, The 12 Pillars, what I realized is, what, there is really a time and place for every single conversation. And the key is having it at the right time in the right moment, because
Right.
sometimes people aren't able to listen. Some people
Mhm.
aren't able to hear. Some people aren't able to transform in that moment. And it really isn't about my wife putting me on eggshells. It's about me having the conversation at the right time. And that is actually the journey, the game, the puzzle of figuring out when can I effectively communicate with my wife, right? Or when can I communicate with Greg Gray? Although I will tell you, with my relationship with Greg, I really don't pick and choose times that I
Yeah.
communicate with you. And that's a plus, but also you're not married to me and you don't live with me and you don't have to put up with my crap, and my moods or whatever. So it's different. So you can't compare your partnership with someone that's a great friend to your wife. You just have to figure out how to effectively communicate. And if something's bothering you, you can't hold on to it. You got to have
Right.
that conversation. And I will tell you the best thing to do with those conversations is to have them face to face if you can. Have them in a mutual place over lunch and talk about the things that bother you. But I would
Does
tell you,
that sound like a public setting in case it goes
well,
left is what that just sounded like,
well,
just so you know.
so this is I'm gonna give them a takeaway on this podcast as we
Okay.
wrap this up. All right.
Okay.
So this is how I communicate with people that I need to have some change in a relationship or partnership or someone's not agreeing with me. Is I start the conversation off with saying that whatever this is really, really important to me. And it would make me happy, the happiest, if you support me in this venture, but I want to know what would make you happy too. Because what's important to me in this partnership is that we are at a win-win and we always feel like we're in this together and it's not me winning or you winning. So then I'm going to go into what's bothering me or what I would like to see change. But you have to set those conversations up correctly and let them
Yeah.
know that this is something that's going to affect you and you're going to become a better partner. And you also want them to win in this relationship. And I think when you do that, you set the stage to have an effective conversation versus doing it from an emotional standpoint, doing it
Mhm.
from, an angry standpoint, doing it in the moment when you know it's probably not the right time because no one's head is clear and everyone's just pissed in the moment.
Or from a manipulative standpoint, because
Correct.
some people use questions to set up other things.
Correct.
And if you've experienced that before, that may be how people are filtering what it is you're saying. So,
Correct.
um,
Yeah.
but you have to, we talk all the time about asking questions. You are a major question asking machine, Jay, but that's only half the piece of it. The other half of it is you have to be willing to receive the answer you get. So, we were talking about how to use, how can I serve you better? And we've taught people that before. Quick story, and then we'll do the wrap up. So, I've been telling people for years that's a great question to ask customers, coworkers, employees. How can I serve you better? How can I serve you better? How can I serve you better? It takes a lot of the personal out of it and really opens people up. So I'm thinking, you know what? Let me just be a little ninja here and take this very same concept and bring it home. So uh, it was, I can't remember how many years ago, but it was in these, I remember it was in December, which is when in the speaking plane, things tend to slow down because all the money's burned and people are doing kickoff meetings in January. So it's really the slowest time of year. So I had been home for about 3 weeks at this point, which uh, pre-COVID was like one of the longest periods of time that I was home without traveling. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to ask Melody this question. And I'm like, okay, so how do I position it? I'm thinking about all the things you're saying, Jay, and I say, and I wait for a quiet time. I make sure, law and order. If law and order's on, that's not a good time. Criminal intent, because there's, timing is important. So I think I waited for a commercial and I said, sweetheart, I have a question for you. And she looked up at me. Um, and I said, how can I love you better? And the moment just sat there for a moment. And she looked at me uh, with those absolutely beautiful eyes. And she said, well, you could take a trip because you've been here like 3 weeks in a row. I'm really getting tired of answering all these questions when I'm trying to look at TV. I couldn't believe that. I was like, how can I love you better? And she said, take a trip. But you know what? That was unvarnished. It was direct. It was clear. And she meant it. And I got it. And I was like, while it did sting, I was like, you know what? Um, I think as a Spinner's song goes, ain't no woman like the one I got. That was a moment where I understood that I was better for this relationship. So will it sting from time to time? Absolutely. But if it makes you better, it's always worth it. So wrap up time, Jay. You got some wrap up. So
Yeah, I do. I don't have as many takeaways today just because being in a conversation, I don't really have, that much time to write and be engaged in the conversation, but I do have some.
okay.
So I think it'd be good to go over what we've kind of taken out of this. And if you guys want to comment in the Facebook some of your takeaways too for anybody that might come into this, that would be great as well.
Sure.
But I think the number one that you said is think and research before you jump. And I think that applies to any partnership that sounds exciting and really any relationship that you're getting ready to jump into a marriage with someone. Like you might need to ask a lot more questions and maybe spend a little bit more time. And, I have a 90-day rule because most people don't show who they really are in 90 days.
Yep.
I don't know why. It's just human beings that have a representative representing themselves most of the time for the first 90 days. And then you get to know the true person. And you'll see that in partnerships and everything else. So 90 days, people will show the true colors. Some people take a little longer, but most it's 90 days. In a partnership, you should set expectations on the very front end before you sign any papers. Your partner should elevate you. They should make you better. Ethics, you should make sure that they have good ethics. Maybe interview a couple of their friends or get some references on their friends and see what their ethics are all about. Trust is really, really important, but don't trust and put all your eggs in one basket and don't have anything else going on the outside. You should know thyself when you go into a partnership, and you should expose thyself within that partnership. You should challenge each other. That doesn't mean argue with each other, but you should challenge each other to get better. Um, don't hold your ego too close to your position in the company. Like, I'm president of the book club and Greg Gray's COO of the book club or vice president. I am not that attached to being president of the book club. You can tell. Just kidding.
He made me a button. Actually, Chris made
It's a
this
very
button
big.
for me.
It's a
Yeah,
very
there it is.
the
It's
people
a
that are
very,
watching, you see, it's actually bigger than its head.
it's a large button, but if it's going to say vice president, I'm going to need it to be at least a half foot across. I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
When your ego falls, that's when arguments come up. That's a very, very good takeaway, Greg, that you said. Have everything in writing, have an attorney review it and agree on it before you jump into that partnership. Communication is the key to every effective and great relationship. Um, Ask yourself on a monthly basis, do they make me better? And if not, have a conversation about how they can make you better. And, we talked about in a partnership, the most effective thing that we have is that we disagree on things, but we don't argue about things. We don't bring ego into our relationship, our partnership. Never, ever a part of what we do. And, some of the questions that we ask on here was raw. We've never asked each other that question. And I told Greg I had some interesting questions, and I'm glad we did that because it was the
Yeah.
first time I heard it, and it was pretty effective. And then Javier said, study deeply the word partnership. Above, he said, a partnership is a key word to understand. So when you're in a partnership, you do have to have some understanding to be able to function in that relationship. And I think, understanding is big in a marriage. And I think it's big in our partnership and understanding where we're coming from. So those are the takeaways for the ingredients for success of our partnership. I would love to be an example for people of what a successful partnership is. I've had some, and it takes some time to figure it out because it's different personalities, it's different dynamics, and really, I think the number one reason that partnerships, number one and two reason that they break up is ego and communication.
Absolutely.
That's the number one reason that they dissipate is people want control, people want to be right. Nobody wants to be wrong. So we really appreciate you guys tuning in today. I mean, this was a different topic. Greg
Very
and I were
different.
talking the other day about our partnership and what made it work. We're like, we should do a podcast and share with other people um, our success paradigm within our partnership and what makes it work. So I love you, my brother Greg Gray.
Absolutely.
You talk
It's likewise, Jay. And let's keep rising. And everybody watching, keep rising. It's all about success.